are an Easter people. Yes, we are. And that probably seems like a really odd statement to say on a September day. But we are Easter people all the time. And normally, we would be looking forward to Rally Day with ice cream sundaes, the Sunday. We would be starting choir and bell rehearsals. We'd be gearing up for No Stove Fest and all sorts of fall events. And of course, I'm sure you noticed I said normally. I'm beginning to think that the word normal should be dropped from our vocabulary because it assumes that there's a blueprint or a mold for all of our lives. And people of faith know better. Being created diversely in God's image, we're given numerous gifts, yet no one is the same. And that means that my normal is not your normal or your normal. It's everyone has something different that is what they do in their lives. And they might call it normal, but it's not normal like we think of for everyone. Okay, I've said way too much about normal, and I've said that word too much, but what I'm getting at is I've heard so many people say that they want to get things back to normal. And I'm like, but it's not the same for everybody. And I think also if we think back to the way our world was before we really started moving into this whole COVID thing, and we compare it to the world now, I'm not at all sure it was better then. But I think, just were simply tired of having to do things differently. So after that little tangent about normal, let's get back to being an Easter people. And let's also think about these last months as a sort of extended Lenten season. You know, the sometimes deserted wilderness condition, filled with challenges, hunger, doubt, fears, temptations. You know, Lent. And life during COVID has been like that. It's been a desert experience with no actual real contact with others outside our homes. There's been a bit of hungry going on. We may not be able to get the food that we were hoping to because groceries were sometimes limited, especially at the start. But we're also hungry for lots of things, for company, for getting our lives back in order. There have been temptations. I have to admit that there have been times I've wanted to just rip off my mask and give somebody a hug that I knew because that's what we always did. But restraint. And of course there's the fear and the anxiety that we've all had. Maybe we don't want to get sick. Maybe we don't want to get somebody else sick. We're not at all sure about going out in public, never mind gathering in a group. But through it all, through all these days and weeks and months, we have found moments, little moments of miracles, of good news. And I'm sure that you can think of those things, those days when somebody brought a smile to your face. I know I had bought Christmas presents for friends and we never got together. So I decided, why wait? I'm just going to mail them. So on a May day, one of my friends called me out of the blue and she said, I just got your package. I thought it was for my neighbor and you just totally made my day. So, you know, it was little things like that made our days, that made us smile and helped us feel connected with one another. But now it's September and the time has come for us to move forward. And here we are. So, since Lent is based just as much on Jesus' life and his journey toward Jerusalem as it is the Israelites' wilderness wanderings, I could see how we can be encouraged today by both of the stories, the lessons or these scriptures. We can be inspired and encouraged by both of them in the sense that these were steps that were taking people's lives forward. Now, we know that the Hebrews were enslaved for many years. They detested their existence. and they were under Pharaoh's yoke for so long, they knew no other life, but they yearned for freedom. Yet when the chance came, it frightened them. They were like that, I grew up with cats, so I know this may not translate to everyone, but the Israelites were kind of like the cat that always lived indoors looking out the window, who finally finds that one moment where it gets to dash out the door to see what he's been watching out on the world all these years. And then when he's faced with the world so wide and so unfamiliar, he freezes because everything is new. There's no familiar hiding places. There's no food bowl in the known position. Everything is scary. And so life becomes fear. And so it took Moses and Yahweh a lot of show and tell to convince the Hebrews that they could get out of Egypt. There were those plagues and the fires and the tornadoes and the winds. They could get them out of Egypt, and then they could be God's people. And on a side note, it appears they complained through the whole thing, but they were only human. The thing is, it wasn't that much different for the disciples. They had been following Jesus. They learned from him so many things. They learned all that they could, and Jesus was honest with them always. Even right up until the last chapter, he told them that he would have to die. But they were in denial in so many ways. They too were only human. And now here we are for 5 months at least. We've been social distancing. We've been kept from being together in large groups, especially to come together as a community of faith. And we've found that very difficult. And we've been keeping on the best that we know how, but we are limited because of, for some of us with underlying health issues, to be compromised by the virus could mean a death sentence. And that in itself I can't even imagine how frightening that is. But the rest of us, if we're being conscientious, we're making sure we're wearing masks and we're not exposing ourselves to those other folks that we don't know. I mean, again, it's compassion, it's care for one another. Like the bumper sticker I saw today, it's simply being kind. Just be kind. So we've been keeping on the best we know how, and of course we're limited, and we look for things to get better. We're human. We need encouragement. We need something to look forward to. And so when the chance comes to worship together, we find it's just not exactly as we had hoped or expected it to be. We're only human. We may be a little bit disappointed. But the point is, Israel spent 40 years in the deserts, and they made it to the other side. And during that time, those folks, their faith was born, and it was tested, and it survived so that they could be God's people to love and serve the Lord. And we know the next chapter in Jesus' story, where we find that there was heartbreak and death and fear, because now what were all the disciples going to do, because everyone was against them? And so their heartbreak gets washed away in the discovery of a great mystery of faith. And it begins when Mary Magdalene, at least according to John's Gospel, when Mary Magdalene found the tombstone rolled away and no sign of Jesus' body. The grief, the tears, the fear, the downright inertia breaks and turns into inexplicable excitement when an angel speaks. Christ appears, and not just that morning, but over and over again to his friends. And death doesn't get the last word this time. Jesus knew his life was in the hands of a power greater than dying, greater than death. And here we are today. We still may have one foot back in that COVID Lenten wilderness, but we are moving forward. And we're carrying with us the age-old wisdom of our forebears. And that wisdom we know from the scriptures that we have been hearing throughout the summer, Genesis and Exodus, and of course we know Jesus' story. And we know because of these who came before us that God doesn't give up on us cursing, despairing, or whining. So we should never give up on God. We know that when defeat seems certain and all hope seems lost, we need to trust that something greater is at work behind the scenes. Because for in a little while there will be no sign of death, just an empty tomb and some linen scraps where Jesus once lay. It's a mystery. It's the greatest mystery of faith that Jesus rose from the dead. And we humans, like I've said, we're also human. We have a hard time with mystery. We like the cold, hard facts. But we faithful humans trust. And we trust that when Jesus rose again, he didn't just appear once to change the lives of his disciples. He keeps coming into our lives. He comes to lead us through this desert. He comes to hold back the flood waters so that we can move forward. He comes to feed us and heal us and tell us to have courage that all will be well. He comes to tell us to stay strong and to keep offering the same that he offered to others, a welcome of shalom. But when we go forth after this time we've shared together, we need to go forth remembering that there is power greater than our fears, greater than death, greater than all the ills that trouble us. And it's the Spirit, that Spirit that came on Pentecost and breathed through everyone, that still breathes through us. It's still with us, and it's still leading us forward, because we are an Easter people, because Christ is risen. Hallelujah.